Hello, this is Donna Carole from Love Consciousness, and this is Real Ascension. Today I'm joined with Phil Smith, who's a friend and colleague of mine, and we've decided just to do a spontaneous podcast. We were chatting this morning in regards to the level and the amount of emotional challenges and what we would call purging, emotional release, that we've both been experiencing quite intensely over the last few weeks and even over the last few days. So we thought we'd jump on and share our reflections on this subject, and just to know that these are just our experiences, and take what resonates with you and discard the rest, and if it's helpful then great. Hi Phil.
Right.
How are you doing today?
Pretty good.
Pretty good, yeah.
Very tired.
Very tired, that's fine.
Emotionally and physically, but
Raw and real.
yeah, I see that as a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same. I feel as though the last few days I've literally been torn open with the level of emotion that I'm feeling and processing. And, I get the feeling from just looking around and even on social media and things that a lot of people are expressing this very intense emotional time in the collective, really. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I can see it too, and I can feel it within. I can feel it personally, and I can also feel it as a part of the whole.
Yeah.
And I think that I can see that in your eyes right now too, and from what you've been sharing with me over the last few days, because it really is just, if you're tapped into that, you can perceive that it's about more than just your personal journey, because your awareness allows you to see yourself as part of the whole. Therefore, or in a misplaced way, slightly more responsible. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I feel that for myself, I have perceived it this way for a while now, and really came into kind of a deep understanding or inner knowing that a lot of let's say, the traumas that we've experienced in our younger years were really designed as a way of us then being able to connect to them at this time, which allows us to do the work that we came here to do, which is transmuting the old energetic patterns, because, we've been set up through our life journey to be able to handle this. And don't get me wrong, I believe it's happening on a whole in the collective, but I feel that some of us, as you say, with the more awareness, we really understand that we're not only transmuting and releasing traumas from this life. You begin to realise that, these patterns have been in our family for thousands of years, some of them, and so we're really kind of clearing the ancestry lines. And then obviously on a collective level, the more human beings all over the globe that are doing this work and transmuting these old energetic patterns that are of a dual reality, they're designed to create separation. The more of us that are doing this means that energy no longer exists in the collective pool, and that's the energy we're creating from. So you can kind of begin to start seeing it in a much bigger picture.
Definitely.
Yeah. How do you feel about that?
When I can see that very visually, in the pictures and images, I can feel it very, very strongly. I can see the different elements to that in terms of my own experience. I can see the ancestral stuff quite clearly, the patterns, and in a way, some of the more highly emotive patterns for me have become easier to clear because they're more obvious. Some of the less emotive, just more conditioning-based patterns have become a little bit more tricky to see because they don't feel as strong, but they're still deeply embedded. Absolutely. And those are really coming to the surface now, and I can see them patterns very, very clearly in the ancestral, through the family timeline. I can see what that means for me in terms of transmutation. And I can also see it in the larger consciousness, in the larger group. And you talk about like the duality. Like I can see that quite clearly because it's that's driving the growth. So just before, when I was just putting my washing on before the podcast, I just had some stuff flood in and I made some notes of it.
Yeah.
So can I just?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'll just.
I mean, while you're looking for those notes, I mean, it seems really clear from my perspective now that there is a growing awareness, which seems to be the driving force of, like you say, we can't hide from these patterns anymore. Like, they're not hidden. They're like the unconscious is becoming conscious.
Yeah.
So they're just kind of all in your face now.
Totally.
and
the more you try to ignore stuff, both individually and collectively, the more extreme it becomes in its expression.
Yes.
It's like it's saying, hello, look at me, and you ignore it, and it's just, and then you can see this.
Doesn't it?
You can notice this individually, but also collectively, and you see this in media, and with the power or the power dynamic that's existed so far until now, which is a part of the duality. You can really see the darkness sort of fighting for survival and becoming more and more extreme in its expression, which makes it more obvious. It's like the more you ignore it, the more extreme it has to become, because that's a part of the process, is that you have to see it so that you can move past it or above it. But so the more ignorance there is, the more ridiculous that gets individually and collectively.
Absolutely.
And that I can see that everywhere in myself as well.
Absolutely. And of course the growing awareness within the collective, as well as the fact that, as you said, these patterns, these dual constructs are becoming more and more ridiculous. So the combination of the two together is you just can't ignore it anymore.
It's a momentum that has begun, and there isn't any holding it back. It's just a matter of time.
It's just a matter.
I think there have been things that have attempted to hold it back and repressed our development for a long time. And I don't want to speculate on what those are or where those have come from, but it's just obvious that it has happened. Whether it's been done to us or we've done it to ourselves. Either way, we've done it to ourselves because we've created that anyway. It's all part of the whole.
Absolutely.
And I mean, my understanding of growth and experience is growing all the time, and I'm always internally aspiring to get to that next level of understanding. And I had another piece come in today just before that's just added to it, that's made it even more holistic. So I'm going to share it with you.
Yeah, great.
And when I talk about this, I always refer to this as what I believe about the situation so far.
Okay. Up to date.
That to me is it's an updating, flexible belief system based on constant experience. And I believe that that's the healthiest way to use your beliefs, because they can be empowering or they can be disempowering. They can be flexible and dynamic, or they can be
and they shouldn't be fixed,
exactly,
because they are just beliefs.
Yeah, exactly. We have them for a reason. We need to make a construct of what we're experiencing, but it's how.
Don't make it so solid
that's the thing. I think we like to find that comfort and to stick to a system of belief, but actually things are always changing and evolving. So having flexibility, I've realised with that, has really set me free from being entrenched. There have been aspects where I have been entrenched that have been sticky, but overall,
I think we can all agree with that.
So I've made a few notes of this. This is my current understanding of it so far, of what I'm going through and what I believe we are going through. one consciousness. So us, divinity, God, whatever you want to call that, in the point of consciousness that was there, that put the spark into create the physical universe, whatever that is. Consciousness is probably the best. I find that it's quite a good general word.
Yeah.
Consciousness creates the adversity, so that's the other. So that's the duality we're talking about. And then we experience and these adverse experiences create dense emotions.
Yeah.
Okay, because the dense emotion is the information of the darkness that we've created as the duality.
Yeah.
So those are perceived and felt in the body, and then we're supposed to feel them, express them. And then that's when we get the growth.
Yeah.
Growth in terms of perception.
Yeah. New understanding.
Yeah. Growth of perspective, awareness.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's how we're growing that we look through. So we're growing through that experience, the adverse experiences that from a spiritual perspective we've created.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what was coming to mind as you were speaking is kind of homing in on some of the things that I've seen, like with my spiritual sight, if you like. Bear in mind that it's all consciousness. Everything is consciousness. Bodies that we're in is all consciousness.
Yeah.
So yes, the larger consciousness. And if we go from like an individual node of consciousness, i.e. me, we're made up of all these different fields, all these different bodies, if you like. And when I've been able to look in, for example, to the emotional body, what you see the emotion as is like a big, dense kind of knot of energy, like all knotted together, like a web that's really tight. And if you think about the way that it works, so we are the consciousness that's streaming through the body, that's reading the energetic information, the patterns that we've also created, and we're also the body. It's all of these things simultaneously. If you think about the way these knots and this tight energies weave together, that consciousness gets stuck. Like it can't just flow through it. And then we feel that physically as like this blockage or emotional pain or whatever that might be. And so, of course, as you mentioned, you know, the key is to really focus on it, is to really home in on it and feel it in the body. And I believe that when we do that, we give the consciousness more kind of power to be able to kind of work its way through it and kind of untangle it and release it. And then, of course, we're releasing it, as you said, from the physical body. And I feel that it's really important not to try not to attach to the story and things, because obviously we've all got our narratives, haven't we? We've all got our past experiences, and we've all got these, probably not just one situation, but a multitude of situations that we've experienced this particular energy that's been difficult. And the more we can kind of get into the awareness and a place of kind of loving compassion, even though that's really difficult when you're physically feeling these knots, and work through it, as you say, express it, work through it in whatever way feels intuitive and natural to you, then we can truly release it.
Yes.
However, if we attach to it and we kind of half release it or whatever, it shows up again, doesn't it? Until we can just look at it for what it is, learn the lessons of what it's brought us, and then we properly release it, and then that's it done for us, at least in an individual experience. Yeah.
I very much see the body as a measuring instrument, that in part is created to use as something that we can actually sense this energy, this emotional energy with.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an instrument to read the consciousness.
Yeah.
And that's why we're all unique, because we all have our unique instrument.
Exactly.
Can we talk a little bit about some of the more personal kind of patterns that we've been looking at and how we individually navigate them?
Definitely.
I mean, one of the things that's became hugely clear for me, and I don't know if anyone can relate to this, is I've been becoming more and more aware that I'm a master of not feeling my physical body. So up in my head a lot. Therefore, I can just kind of ignore that knot in my tummy or that tension in my solar plexus or whatever it might be. And the awareness that's been coming in over the last few weeks, which is, I believe, which is what's made this last few weeks super intense for me, is the awareness is constantly reminding me, get back in your body, feel it all, feel it all. And in the unfolding of feeling it all, so disconnected from that through my life experience that I forgot what it was like to deeply, like deep into my heart, feel that love, even if that love is sadness or whatever it is. And so it's leaving me feeling really, really raw. But, because I now understand that the feeling, the getting my sensitivities back, that in itself is a superpower. And that is how I deeply connect to me. So I'm kind of allowing myself to do that now. So I keep just finding space, not running away from it, creating a space, going in, even connecting to my higher self for some guidance, connecting to my subconscious mind so that I'm working simultaneously to ask, show me what it is that I need to see. Show me what it is that I've forgotten or that I need to learn or where this came from in order for me to fully release this. And then what happens is things come up to the surface, understandings, things that I've forgotten about, experiences that I had that were really emotionally overwhelming that I've sort of buried somewhere deep in my subconscious mind. And then in that kind of exploration of looking at it from a higher perspective and really feeling it, that's the key, like not jumping back out of the body, like staying in, and it can feel, some of the things that I've been feeling physically is like, a knife, you know, deep within my solar plexus that are like almost to the point where I want to be doubled over with the intensity of it, but just staying in it, saying, right, I'm sitting in this, I'm not avoiding it, I'm not running away from it. And then going through this like really deep healing, releasing, crying, and making sure that I allow that wave, whatever that wave is, to run all the way through. And if I have to cry for half an hour, not trying to cut it short or stop it before, the end of the wave. And then once that wave's passed, I feel like an energetic movement, I guess, in the area that felt really tight.
You've made space.
And I feel open and raw. But then over, the hours to follow, possibly even like within 24 hours, I feel like a new sense of self coming in.
Absolutely.
And I had a massive realization yesterday that I'm quite serious, and I don't always find it easy to get into a playful side of me. And when I was doing the work yesterday and I was going through all my teenage years, so from about 12 through to 16, which was one of the most challenging little sections of my life, that was when I had my breakdown and when my depression began. And that's when I repressed the joyful, the child, the playfulness, the adventurer. Now, don't get me wrong, I see that coming out at times, But I realised in the repression of that part of myself, I also repressed the creativity
Yes.
and the things that I love to do. So yeah, that was really interesting. So
Yeah.
now that I've reconnected to that, I'm hoping to reconnect to, you know, being a bit more playful again and
Yeah.
being able to get into that kind of the inner child, you know.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's really vulnerable.
How about you? What have you been experiencing, and how do you navigate it?
Same kind of thing. I'll be a bit more personal as well, but I just want to say that, like, that was beautifully put. And when how I've come to understand it is that when we repress an emotion, so a dense emotion, which is supposed to be felt, that's information that we're supposed to move through the body so that we can learn from the information to grow the perception, to grow the consciousness, right? But when we repress that energy, we then have to disconnect from it. And that's what we do. The consciousness escapes up into the head often. And that's when we get this disconnection from mind and body. Now we're rattling around in the head trying to do everything on a logical level or an overly rational level. You can see this a lot. And we do that for such a long time that we create a very, very profound disconnection. So then it's hard to connect to self. It's hard to connect to an emotion. When we connect to the emotions that we've repressed, we are connected to self, because it's those emotions that disconnected us from self. We felt those negative emotions through the adversity, which we then repressed and disconnected from, and in the process of doing, disconnected from self. So when we start reconnecting to those deeper emotions in the body, we start feeling again from the perspective of what it really feels like to be us, having had those experiences. And then we start letting those through. We literally, this is about where we put our attention.
Absolutely.
Attention's been up here, looking for things to soothe ourselves, distract ourselves on the outside. But without the awareness of what's happening, what else can we do? But it's only when we start really connecting into the body, the emotions in the body, that we start reconnecting to self. And doing it by connecting to the subconscious, creating a communication with it, asking it questions about where this comes from and what happened and who and how, is a really effective way of doing it. And because you're creating a dialogue and you're asking your own subconscious memory bank to communicate.
And even speaking out loud, you know, I'll often speak out loud because then I'm expressing it as I'm processing it.
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
And you mentioned, you know, expression.
Expression's key, and I call that reflect to connect, because we're by having a conversation, we're reflecting, and by doing that, we're connecting. I've recently found that if I can't get answers about who, what, when, where from my subconscious, that just putting my attention into the body, going in underneath the stress and anxiety and fear, deep further down into the physical body, into the lower torso, you can connect to an emotion. I don't necessarily need to know that from that, but by connecting to the emotion, feeling it, letting it expand in the body, move through. And this is the work I'm doing with my clients all the time. It's the same thing every single time. And it's like moving that through, letting it literally, sensing it as it comes all the way up through the body, through the chakras and out. You know, it comes out in the tears, the energy comes out, it comes out the top of the head. So it's like that moves through, and then what I found is it does start to dissipate. And at that point, that wave that you're ready to move through you at that point has moved through you. And when the space becomes available, this is when we're plonking in a positive emotion, which we generate from a positive image or just a positive, creating a positive feeling there, allowing that to expand. And that helps the growth process, because it is literally a step-by-step guide to how the process is supposed to work naturally. And what I found with that is that moving that emotion through, both with myself and people I'm working with, is that once the emotions move through, then, because it can happen both ways around, you can get the where and the how first and then tap into the emotion. One way to connect, beautiful way to connect. Or you can tap straight into the emotion. And then the where and the what and the who comes afterwards, because the information is in the energy.
Absolutely.
So it's just about accessing. But on a personal level, wow, what have I been purging recently? So yesterday, it was Father's Day. I'm a father, and the kids were with me, and then I took them back. They'd been with me all weekend, and I took them back to their mum's on yesterday afternoon around 4. And I was in the car on the way back, and then I just felt this sadness come up, and I was like, oh my God, the self-talk kicked in. I can't cry right before I drop the kids off. Their mum's going to see I've been crying. I don't want them to see me crying. And I recognise that as like these are the ideas and the beliefs that get in the way that cause us to repress emotion, which I've been dismantling recently, quite publicly, on some of my stuff I post on my social media, saying, hey, right, this is the stuff that gets in the way of our processing emotion. Therefore, our growth. Let's reevaluate.
Let's get over it, and let's just know that we're all going through it, and it's okay to show emotion.
Yes, it's crazy. So let's dismantle that whole idea about emotion, so that we can start feeling and expressing ourselves again, so we can get that growth really going. That's really important to me as a message. But so I recognised that in myself, what my mind was trying to tell me to do based on my conditioning. I disregarded it and allowed the emotions to come through. I used my breath like I do when I'm working with my clients, and to breathe it through. And Marley, my youngest, saw that I was crying, and she asked me if I was alright, and I said, yeah, I'm okay. And she just held my hand, which was really sweet. And it was very important for me to sort of let that emotion move through my body, breathe it through, and allow it to come out, but not get into too much of a dialogue with the children, because I want to teach them that this is okay and that this is normal, that it's not a bad thing, or that it's something we should repress. That Dad's experiencing.
There's a lot of shame, isn't there, around showing emotions?
Very much. We have to remove that shame, that veil of shame. So I let that sadness come through. I got back and just like breathed it through, and then made some space for something more positive there. And then took the kids in, and as I started to make that space after moving that emotion through, then the perspective started to change. This is how it works. We grow through the emotion. We don't grow by bypassing it. We just become bitter and more programmed. So I started to let that through, and then I started to have the perspective shift and growth of being able to see the entire thing from a different perspective. And then when I was on my way back, I saw the whole thing clearly, what had happened. There was a wound there, a father wound in me, my father was very lost, and he abandoned me on somebody's doorstep at 15 years old. After having subjected me to a very highly abusive partner of his, who made caused a lot of emotional pain in our family. My dad was in an abusive relationship. As we would understand it now, highly and quite high up on there. If you did one of the modern risk assessments,
he'd be quite high.
He might be quite high up on the risk factor with that. But how much do we know compared to what we knew then? My God, no one understood that then. I experienced it firsthand, and there was a lot of parental alienation that happened whilst I was there. So when I was thrown out of there, I was very much from my perspective, burnt all my bridges. I was very confused because I had lots of conflicting emotions, a lot of which had been manipulated. So I had that wound where he dropped me off, and I never saw him again after that. And then he died 6 years later. So that was a wound that, I released a lot of that wound, but there is an aspect of it that I had still inside of me, which wasn't. The abandonment wound and the betrayal wound was massive. But then, that's gone now. I've purged that, and that was an epic purge. Let me tell you, when that happened a couple of years ago. But that was just, it was so extreme, but it was wonderful at the same time. But it was because it was Father's Day, and it wasn't just about my father. It wasn't about the abandonment. It was that, my God, actually, I miss my dad despite what happened. And when's the last time that I have experienced a proper family. And that in my life has been very, very fractured.
Yeah.
And there's no blame in any of this at all, but it was that way. And so the sadness was kind of a grieving of losing a thing that perhaps was never intact for me in the first place. Which was triggered as I was dropping the children back. You know, their mum's got a lovely partner, and they're really happy, and they've just bought a house and all of that, which is amazing. I'm really, really happy for them. And but it kind of, all of that whole situation triggered in me. Oh, now I'm going to drop my kids off here into this happy home family situation, and then I'm going to go off back to my place alone. And you know, what I can say is that, you know, despite all of the conflicts we've had, me and their mum, is that she's always had a very strong sense of family, and I am grateful to her for that. I go there for Christmas dinner, you know, and that is a level of forgiving or overcoming that is new to me. It's definitely something that doesn't exist in my family of origin, and the what do we call it, the generational.
So you're the one that you've been waiting for.
Absolutely,
you know,
absolutely.
To break those patterns.
Yeah, definitely, and I can see that, and I know that other people in my family can see it too. So after I released that, I started realising what that was about for me, and I moved into a greater level into an elevated state of awareness. Perspective had grown from the experience and purging the sadness. I then moved into gratitude.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then seeing how grateful I am for my kids, and how grateful I am that they have me.
Yeah.
There's more gratitude when I think about how grateful I am that they've got me.
Yeah.
You know, and actually how lucky they are, and how much love they've got around them.
Yeah, that the pattern's already been broken.
I started seeing all the positives, having purged that emotion. That's probably the key point there. Yeah. Is that through, you know, it gets triggered from something, and then the tendency without awareness is to look outside of ourselves and put attention onto the trigger, and that's when blame kicks in. But actually, if we can take that just into the body, put the attention into the body, what's the emotion under this, and then breathe into that and allow that to come through, we get the answers and the growth that we really need. So it's just about where we put the attention.
Absolutely. I mean, what was coming to me as you were speaking, not just about your own experiences, but, you know, you mentioned your dad and that he was in, you know, a sort of domestic abuse situation, is that I've been kind of getting like an understanding or an intuitive message, if you like, over the last month, that, you know, one of the biggest programs, if you like, that's running through, you know, the collective consciousness of humanity is the victim-victimizer program, which is huge. And of course, there's lots and lots of different aspects to that particular program, but of course, it's designed to separate. You know, the moment you become a victim, which we've all experienced being the victim, you lose all your power. You hand over all of your power because a victim doesn't have any power. And then, of course, the victimizers, the defense, you know, and underneath it, it's probably the same wound that both parties are dealing with. It's just that we are reacting in a different way. You know, we have different coping mechanisms to that particular wound. And I've saw this play out now in my own experience over the last month, multiple different ways, you know, which is why I feel that, you know, not only is this a big program that's beginning to be purged collectively, but also, as I mentioned, there's not just one aspect to it. You know, I've probably over the last month purged at least 30 different, you know, sub-programs that are all connected to the victim-victimizer.
Absolutely.
And seeing myself jump between even both roles. You know, and again, it's that understanding on a deeper level, isn't it? Because the awareness is so heightened, you're like, wow, I can see how that person's been triggered and how that person's triggered, this in me, and then I'm triggering this in them, and then the defense comes out, um and as I said, going back, I was looking at my teenage years and seeing that, during that time I very much went into full victim, and just closed down, as a protective mechanism. Like, I can't take any more of this, so I'm just going to shut myself down. That's
Yeah.
the easiest way that or the only way I know how to deal with this
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
So it's such a big one. And all I can think is, if we could actually transmute that program, the world would be a different place overnight.
Yeah. I think it is transmuting, and it's becoming, the awareness of it, of that program, is becoming more and more apparent. It shows up in ways like the Johnny Depp thing.
Yeah, yeah.
I can't remember his.
Amber Heard, is it?
Yeah. That's how I view that.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
this is a purge.
Yeah,
Okay, and yes,
absolutely.
like the coping strategies, that it's the same kind of pain, the same kind of trauma that leads to the relationship dynamic in both parties. It's just expressed differently in terms of coping and defense. So
absolutely, and that trial was very public. I mean, I didn't follow it. I rarely watch kind of mainstream stuff now, but I know it was very public, that a lot of people were talking about it. And so I can only imagine that as individuals were watching that, it was bringing a lot of stuff up to the surface for them. Because, I know you've been in difficult relationships, I've been in difficult relationships, maybe we all have, where we have, different levels and different extremities of it, but we've all experienced these things, haven't we?
Yes.
So, yeah.
And that is, like, I saw that as a real, like, this is great, because it's just bringing
it
so
up
much
to the
up
light.
to the surface.
Yeah. It's got to come up to the surface to be seen.
Yes.
It's got to be seen to be acknowledged. It's got to be acknowledged to be released.
For somebody in that situation that identifies with the victim, then I think it's important to recognise that means that there's a wound there.
Yeah.
And it has manifested in you taking a stance of a victim. Equally, in the person that has perhaps been the perpetrator in that situation, it's also important to understand that there's a wound there, and it has manifested in the coping behaviour of you becoming a perpetrator.
A defence.
It's another coping strategy, another defence. So for every person that's chosen that way, and every person that's chosen that way, there's a perfect opportunity for a relationship. Ultimately, the opportunity for both people to, through the toxicity of it, understand that there's a wound individually underneath, and move that through them so that it can be transmuted and they can grow.
Absolutely. I mean, I personally am just of the understanding that everything that we experience is the universe giving you an opportunity, or you giving you an opportunity to grow, and you giving you an opportunity to release these emotions that are in the physical body. They're literally in our cells, in our muscles, in our bones. I mean, they're inside of us. We're carrying them around. If you have enough awareness to recognise that the world is a mirror in a lot of ways, and that even when you have interactions with people and you find their behaviour quite disgraceful, and you think, well, that's nothing to do with me, actually, in my experience, what that's showing me is perhaps a shadow aspect of myself, or, as we've just mentioned, I may not display the same behaviours as this individual, but I carry the same energetic pattern. I carry the same wound. It's just that I deal with it in maybe a more repressed way, they deal with it in a more attacking way. And so the world is a mirror, and it's constantly giving us opportunities to see what's in front of us, to let us know what we need to be looking at inside of us. And if we could use the world as a mirror, we could perhaps even speed up the self-realisation, and the work that we need to do to fully heal.
For sure. And I think that that we might see the struggle with doing that as how much responsibility are you prepared to take?
Yeah.
But I think underneath that is there's a deeper part to it, which is how much pain is there and how high is your resistance to it?
Yeah.
Because if we break down the responsibility element, really, perhaps it comes down to how aware am I of how to process this pain? How aware am I of how to move it through my body? How aware am I of any of that? And actually, it's the resistance to it that creates the disconnection.
Yeah.
So when we say, "Oh, that person's not responsible to deal with their own pain," I think it's a question of responsibility. Yes, it is responsible to do it, but like that's secondary to how ready is a person to face their own pain and let go of the resistance. So the more resistance, the more defense. The more defense, the more perpetration, and the more projection, and the more judgment and bad behaviour there is.
It's going back to the victim, you know.
Yeah. It's still a victim's mentality, isn't it? Even if it's a perpetrator of some kind of crime or abuse or wounding other people, it's still a victim.
I can totally relate to it, you know. And having the realization way back, 10 years ago when I finally, and it was that statement, the moment you become the victim, you hand over all your power. And I'd spent years and years of my life literally sitting in depression, blaming. I blame my mum, I blame my dad, I blame my upbringing, I blame the school, I blame the universe, just blame anyone else. Even though by this point I was in my, early 30s, and actually none of this stuff was actually happening in front of me anymore. I was still carrying all of the wounds from the past and just playing them out over and over and over again in loops. So what you said about responsibility, this is a massive one, that I perceive out there when I look at humanity. And if we all individually could get to the place in awareness where we realise that we are actually generating our own reality creation, our own experience. And that is based on the programs that we hold, the energy patterns that we hold, etc., etc. And so the moment you can take responsibility for your reality, for your life, for your creation, is the moment when you can really start making some massive changes in your experience of life and your interaction. And knowing, as I said before, that everything is showing up because guess what? Somewhere inside of you, you hold that information. So you're pulling it in like a magnet. You're having the thoughts, you're having the feelings. I think a lot of the time, and again, awareness growing, you're becoming more aware of thoughts. I know in the past you could spend all day just going round in circles with negative thought patterns, and barely even notice that you were doing it. It's just like so deeply ingrained, and then wondering why your reality creation's like a pile of shit, and all you're doing is thinking negative thoughts all day long. So that's just an example again of just understanding the power in which we have when it comes to the co-creation of reality, and it starts with your own individual reality creation, and to stop playing a victim because you are creating your experience. A great example is being in a relationship with someone and you perceiving it to be a bad relationship. And again, it only unfolds that way because perhaps you're both triggering each other, for example. And then in my experience with the work that I've done, I've maybe cleared out a program and then noticed that when, say, my other half at the time does something that would normally trigger me, there's no trigger. Therefore, we don't get into this like power struggle together because the trigger's been undone. So, so then you suddenly realise, wow, it takes two to tango.
Yeah.
And I was very much part of this kind of dynamic, this dual dynamic, with, whoever it was that I was having this power struggle with. Once I'd undone my part in that, it couldn't exist in this relationship anymore. So, yeah, take responsibility for your own part in it all, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. What do you feel when you look out at the public? So when you look out, I know that you're a therapist and you deal with clients, and we're calling this kind of the big purge, and it's happening collectively. So do you see this kind of when you look out into the world, like, and in your interactions and in your therapy sessions, do you feel that this kind of process is speeding up for everyone, or just some?
I see it as speeding up for everyone.
Okay.
With varying levels of resistance.
Okay.
In my client work, the kinds of people that are coming in are already very aware and very responsible.
Okay.
And they meet the challenge of their own growth.
Nice.
In a beautiful way. They feel such pride of them because of how much they're putting into it. And that is so beautiful to me. I feel quite emotional mentioning that. And I don't really know why. Maybe it's just because it's who I am. But that's amazing. So I see, and then obviously I have like my friends, like you, and other people that we all know we're kind of very similarly on this path. And I see that awareness there too. But I also see it in where there is less awareness, because the resistance internally creates resistance externally, which creates conflict and struggle and stress. So when I perceive that in public, I perceive it like that's what that is. Also, if in the public domain, in terms of media, alternative media and mainstream media, I see it there too. I see the alternative media coming through with lots of information that is more freeing and liberating, and I also see the old consciousness of jumping on the bandwagon for personal gain filtering into that, like it does with everything. And then I also see from the mainstream that being used as a tool to gaslight the entire movement. And I also see the absolutely extreme expression of old programming coming through the mainstream media. Very much depends on my internal state, how I'm perceiving others.
How you perceive it,
how I'm perceiving anyone. If I'm, depending on how my internal state is how I'm going to perceive everything, because it's a filter. So if I'm feeling a bit frustrated or a little stressed, and then I drive into town because I've got to go to work, then I'm making judgments about people inside, and name calling and all this, and then I'm going, oh my God, this is just because I'm stressed, and I'm projecting that stress out onto the world. Or if I'm not happy about something in myself, then I recognise that as I'm projecting that in my perception of others. But when I'm in a more loving and grateful and joyful state, I'm perceiving everyone through that lens. And if there's any challenging behaviour showing up, there's understanding there for me. So what I'm really striving for is to just be more of the latter.
Of course. Of course.
And it all, and what I've come to understand is that all depends on what state I'm cultivating inside of me. But it's not always going to be a positive one, because when I'm in a part of my cycle which is for getting down into the dense emotions, then that needs.
We can't bypass that.
You can't, and it does create stress. And that's how I know that when I'm feeling stressed, it's because I've got something that needs purging. So I go down into it. So when I'm in that state and I am making judgments, they're only internal, and I'm not kind of going around being a dick. Hopefully not to others. So I am also kind to myself. And go, okay, this is about me. I recognise that however I'm perceiving others is about me.
It's a really good point, and it's managing it in a healthy way,
Yeah.
you know. And I think that again, we keep bringing in the awareness, that the awareness is, you know, for example, if you're processing anger, and you know that I was processing some anger last week, um, I wanted to get that anger out, but what I didn't want to do was start screaming and shouting and taking that anger out on anyone around me. So, you know, I found a healthy way to express. I think what I did was I screamed at my, you know, recorder, and got it all out that way, and then just deleted it because it was out then. I didn't need anyone to hear that. I just needed to express
Exactly.
what I was going through.
It's in your body.
It's in my body, exactly.
It needs to come out of your body.
Yeah,
and it needs to come out of your body. There's two ways of doing it. Unless you're going to repress it, which is the third way. But there's two ways of expressing it. In a damaging way to yourself and others, or in a non-damaging way to yourself and others.
Exactly.
If you choose the second one, you can express your anger. You don't need anybody else to hear it.
Exactly.
It's about getting
and it's
it
that
out
wave
of you.
again, isn't it?
Yes.
It's a wave. We need to get it out.
Yeah.
You know, how do we get anger out? And then, of course, you know, generally under anger, you know, there's another layer, which is sadness or heart or something.
That comes through after, doesn't it, Jem? Not always, but a lot of the time it does. Like after you've let the anger through, because you're angry because you were hurt.
Yeah.
You know, and then my anger tells me. My anger is a fuel that allows me to let you know that you've hurt me and how you've hurt me.
Exactly.
What you did.
Exactly. So. Yeah. And it can be important to express that to another person, but I guess I perceive it as let the angry wave pass and then respond, you know, to the other person and share your feelings maybe, so that you're not kind of going in that defence, rather than which makes everything a little can make things cloudy and everything else. I mean, what's really coming in is you know, wow, we're going through this big purge collectively. We're seeing it out in the world. Everyone's feeling it. Some are more aware than others. But what is the point? You know, like, why are we doing this? You've mentioned growth, you know, a few times, and so I guess my question to you is, if this is kind of an evolution of consciousness and this is a purging to allow us to become more of who we truly are without all the layers of conditioning, like, what's your experience of that? Do you feel that you're becoming more like sensitive? Do you feel that you are gaining kind of gifts or anything really? Like, what's your experience of that? Because there's got to be a point to all this.
Oh yeah, definitely. and you know, I'm not gonna censor myself by telling you what I believe. And yes, more sensitive. Yes, more connected. But for me, it's reconnecting to the past emotions that have been repressed, so that we can purge them, so that we can reconnect to self fully. By reconnecting to self fully, we reconnect to one another fully. We reconnect to the whole fully. So we become the emotional, psychosocial, spiritual beings that we actually are. And then we manifest that consciousness in this realm, in this physical reality, which for me was the aim. Is the aim. And you know, you talk about age of Aquarius, etc. Perhaps it's part of a cycle, but to break through to that, we have to dismantle everything that the previous paradigm was built upon, whilst simultaneously creating the new. But for me, it intuitively feels like there is a purpose to this, and the purpose is to evolve this reality beyond its current point, but also to continue to. And this is why I believe in other dimensions and different beings and different densities. I mean, it's just a way of communicating it, but absolutely, of course, like, you know, if like I can really recognize inside of me that the number one, the reasons for life or consciousness are to rejoice, be blissful, love, to experience. Okay, and the other part of that is to create. That is to grow. So I recognize that in me, I recognise that as a part of me being as a part of the whole.
Yeah.
And that is like a very deep desire.
Yeah.
Which I think that consciousness being in all its bliss was to go, okay, this is amazing what I'm going to do with this, but I'm going to expand and I'm going to grow and I'm going to do more.
Yeah.
And that's reflected in the human being. Because when you have all of your needs met, and the survival, the emotional, what do? Your tendency is towards self-actualization. Your tendency is always towards self-actualization, which is Abraham Maslow's work. I see that from a very spiritual perspective. I might wonder if he did too. But you have those base level survival and emotional needs met, and then the final part of that pyramid, of that hierarchy of needs, is then towards self-actualization, and then the drive to always move toward that was what they called the actualizing tendency. And I see that as the actualizing tendency of all human beings and the actualizing tendency of the universe itself, or the consciousness that created it.
Yeah. I mean, I had an experience a few years ago, which it was the experience of kind of being at the top of the pyramid, if you like, and realizing in that moment, through this experience, that I was sat in the seat, if you like, of what I perceived to be my higher self, and kind of almost looking down, to the consciousness below this point, and realizing it was all the conditioning and all the programming and all the self-created personas, and realize that this aspect of myself, if you like, my, me being self-actualized, my higher self, the true essence of who I actually am, had always been there. So, but it might have been kind of a faded voice in the background, if you like, because it was trying to kind of get through to the avatar, if you like. It was trying to get through to the human, through all of the conditioning, through all of the programs, through all of the created personas, through all of the bullshit, in other words.
All the repressed emotion.
Through all the repressed emotion.
That we disconnect from.
Yeah.
We disconnect from that. We disconnect from self. We disconnect from intuition.
Yeah, absolutely. To then realise that, so that's how I perceive it, that we, we're kind of realigning, reconnecting to that aspect of ourselves that's always been there, a higher level of consciousness, if you like, that we've managed to let go of the, the programming. We've managed to work through the conditioning. We've managed to work through the traumas, and we can just return to who we were designed to be, our true essence, really, with clarity. And again, having that connection then to the universe, the cosmos, having a connection to it all, because everything's connected, one consciousness. And I do feel, even though it's sometimes difficult to put into words, I do feel strangely that each and every time I let go of another big program or another repressed emotion, I feel kind of like an opening, I guess, an energetic opening, like a spaciousness, more clarity, a wider perspective of things. And then, of course, that integrates and that just becomes normal. And then it's kind of on to the next and on to the next. So it's a really, really interesting process. But at the moment, tough. So just acknowledging that to, for myself and to everybody that might be listening to this, be kind to yourself. This is not easy. No one's saying it's easy. It doesn't matter. I've been clearing for 10 years. And some of the stuff I'm clearing over the last few weeks are the deepest and densest energetic patterns that I have faced in a long, long time. And there are moments when I might kind of get pulled into them a little bit more than I wish to. and kind of think, oh my God, I've had enough of this. I can't keep doing this, and when does this end? And then having to really find that part of me that's more aware again and pull myself out of the density and go, right, come on, we know what to do. We have a process. So, I mean, I think that's how I'd kind of like to wrap up this podcast today, is again just summarising for anyone that's listening what they might do, like how they might create a little process for themselves. Key things, if you like, that maybe you use as reminders or tools, or like when you find yourself, in these, processes, and you know that something else is ready to be released. What's the first thing that you think that you do or you remind yourself of?
That's a really good question.
Because it's about catching it, isn't it? Before we get sucked in a lot of the time.
Well, I think the first thing is that none of us catch it every single time.
No, exactly. Yeah, and that's why it's like, be kind to yourself.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I think that's the first thing. We all get caught out, and that's the nature of it. So I guess next is when we do catch it, it's understanding that, okay, what I'm perceiving on the outside here, what I'm struggling with, that's causing stress and anxiety, is just a point of attention that is really reflecting something deep inside of me that needs to be released in terms of emotion.
So do you recognise that, and is that almost a thought process, like that or
it's
is it
remembering,
just...
I think,
yeah,
and it's training yourself to remember. I forget, and then I find myself judging and projecting, and then I go, oh, okay.
And then you remember again.
Yeah,
you
it's
pull
like,
it back in.
It's cool that I was doing that, but okay, that's just how I've been trained, and now I'm learning a new way. So what's really going on here? Is that. And then I've condensed this down to quite a simple process, really, of when I'm recognising that in the mirror, that is underneath my stress and anxiety is a deeper emotion from the past that's unconscious in terms of where it comes from, memory-wise, that needs to be, so it's owning it, right? That's in me. That needs to, that is my work is to let that move through my body, like my system is designed to do, like this conduit is designed to do, so that I can grow perspective, so I can grow awareness, grow consciousness. So from that point, it's the attention. Right now, my attention isn't on the trigger; it's on this is inside of me. First, the stress and anxiety. Just simply take your attention deeper into the body, the body. Move your attention below the stress and anxiety. What emotion is under here? Is it sadness? Is it hurt? Is it guilt? Is it fear? Is it anger?
And as you mentioned before, sometimes you don't know, and that's okay too.
You don't even know. You don't need to be able to describe it. You just need to be able to put your attention into it and recognise where it is inside your body. That's it. Because it's in your body. That's where the energy is. Absolutely. It's stuck in your body. So once you've located it, label it if you can. Don't label it if you don't want to. If you see it in a visual way as a colour or an image, a person or a shape or some kind of geometry, that's great. If you don't, you just recognise a sensation, a feeling, emotion, you want to name it, whatever. It doesn't matter. As long as you can locate it, that's all that's important. So you've taken your attention from the trigger into the body, down to the root emotion underneath the stress and anxiety. Trigger, stress, anxiety, deep root emotion from the past. When we're anxious, because we're anxious about feeling an unconscious emotion from the past. When we're stressed, it's because we don't have the bandwidth of awareness to cope with the experience that we're having. The lack of growth there, which means there's a repressed emotion from the past. And
a little part of your consciousness
inside of it, trapped, because that's the bit that you've also disconnected from by disconnecting from the emotion. Absolutely. So go into that. Go into that emotion that's deep down in the body that you've located, the feeling. Put your attention into it. Notice it, acknowledge it. Let it know that it's done its job. You're safe. It's safe. Now this is where the breath comes in, because when you breathe into it, you do two things. You create a channel into it which creates a channel from here right the way down through your chakras into the emotion. Yeah. So you breathe deeply and slowly into that. You're also keeping your attention in the body when you do that.
Yeah.
But you give yourself a sensation that, okay, I'm breathing into this, I have control. This whole can of worms idea, I don't have control of this emotion, if I tap into opening a can of worms, is an illusion. The opposite is in fact true. It's the fact that you've got too much control that's the problem, and you haven't learned to let go and surrender, let go of resistance. So the breath helps with that too. The emotion will start to expand when you acknowledge it. And then what it wants to do is move up through your body. So just use that breath to keep all that channel open and allow it to move all the way up and out. Notice where you feel like you want to repress it. Is it from the stomach? Is it from the solar plexus? Is it from the throat? Very common. Is it from the back of the eyes? Keep breathing into that emotion, let it move through your body and up and out the top of your head or out of your eyes. Just keep breathing into it and allow that to literally pump through you. It'll come through in a few waves. I call this the wave technique. And after it, you'll notice that it then starts to dissipate. It won't last forever. That's not true. So when it does, then pop a positive emotion in there by way of either thinking of an image or a person that creates the opposing emotion to what you are purging. Whatever that denseness is, a good clue to what emotion do I want to cultivate in this space is, well, what's the opposite to that, right? So start cultivating that in that space by putting it in there and feeling it, or by thinking of a person or a thing or a memory that you'll know, your body will know. You know how to do emotion. So and then allow space for that to grow. If there's a colour or an image that goes with that, allow that to expand and breathe into it and expand it in the same way. And allow that to expand into the rest of your body, and even out of your body. And then when you feel like you've reset your emotional state, then you can come out of that process. Nice. And then see what learnings come thereafter in terms of perception, because this is how we grow.
I mean, it's really interesting listening to your full process, particularly because it isn't that far different from the way that I do things, and we haven't really, shared how we really move through these processes. Obviously, we're both therapists. We both have like a bag of tools. But what I find particularly interesting is that I don't even feel that you need that bag of tools, because I've come to a point now where, for me, as I mentioned at the start, it's more about just allowing yourself to feel the emotion. And so all these tools that I've used in the past, I don't even go to them now. Number one is I don't ignore it. And I know that life is busy, and I know that, we might have kids, and it's not always appropriate to find that space. But what I generally find, if something's quite heavy, until I create the space to allow myself to release it, then I can feel it just lingering, and it's not moving. So I find space, as I said, I'll even open a container and connect to my highest self and ask for guidance, and maybe do some breathing or something, just to, in other words, it's all about focus, what you focus on, getting into the emotion, really, really feeling it. And then, being intuitive as well. Sometimes my body wants to move, so I might want to get up and just move around and shake and jump. Sometimes I want to make sounds. As I said, I might record myself, like, shouting if I feel that there's a wave of anger there and I don't want to take it out on someone around me. A lot of the time for me, I'm purging a lot of grief. So there's generally, as you say, it's just a way of releasing, and I'll allow that wave to move all the way through. In exactly the same way, I'll use my breath. I'll get right in, breathing deeply, right into where I feel the tension or the knot or whatever it is, and asking for guidance, asking to see if there's any lessons that I need to learn from the energy, the experience, and I'll normally get imprints of things come through. So I'm doing it all simultaneously, really, and just being open and surrendering. That's the word of the day. The word of the month is I'm not fighting it anymore. I understand that this is a process. that we're going through, not just individually but collectively, is way bigger than us, and which is why I'm just surrendering to it. You know, I don't see any point in fighting it, or ignoring it, because as you said at the start, it just comes at you bigger, and badder, and it keeps coming, until you say, right, and I can't ignore this anymore.
There's only so much you can control your environment.
Exactly. So finding the space, not ignoring it, surrendering, doing all of those things, knowing that for me that helps to move things through quite quickly, running through the wave, running through the emotion, and then just understanding that there is an integration period, and you know that's speeding up too. You know, so the integration might just be an hour or so, but I might feel quite open and quite raw, and as you said, you know, bringing in something more positive. I'll normally turn to gratitude, and see the learning, and be thankful for being given the opportunity, to release something else, knowing that with every release there is the expansion.
Do you put your attention into the heart when you do gratitude?
If I'm feeling very dense, I will actually command my heart to open. And this is something that I only recently learned, that we have the capability of, even when we are feeling very, very stressed physically, that you can command your heart to open. And what I will try to do is, no matter how much physical or emotional pain that I'm experiencing, there's at least an aspect of me there that's the compassionate witness to that process. So therefore, I'm able to navigate it, like from, in other words, I'm connected to my higher self. I'm navigating it from not only my higher self's perspective, not only my physical being, which is an intelligent entity in its own right, but I'm allowing myself to dig into my subconscious mind if I have to gain lessons or learning or whatever, and so it's all just one simultaneous experience, and there's no rules of how it unfolds. I just let it unfold like naturally, and be really intuitive with it as well, but moving through things very quickly, and almost kind of landing from processing one big thing to then, oh, here we go, here's another, and here's another, and here's another, and
little breaks in between?
Little breaks. It really depends. I mean, I'm kind of in full surrender at the moment, and I'm kind of asking, come on, let's just do this. So I believe that that's why it's happening quite rapidly for me. I know that if I need a break, or at least it's my experience, if I need a break and I want to go and socialise and connect more, and I just say, like, just give me a bloody break. I'll normally get a little break, because really we're guiding it for ourselves.
I never thought of it that way, actually, but
we're guiding it. It might mean that the density, if it's quite strong density that you're carrying, it might mean that it's just going to stay where it is for a few days. And, let's face it, we're masters at overriding, these feelings and just cracking on with life.
Absolute
so
masters.
We can do that anytime we want, if we feel that we just need a couple of days or a week or whatever, But I guess for me, because I've got the space, I'm just taking full advantage of that, and just like, come on, let's just clear as much as we can. And I will get to the point where I'll be like, whoa, like, enough already, right? I'm just going to go and forget about all this stuff for, whether it's a day, a couple of days, whatever, and I'm just going to go and have fun.
Totally.
And then I'll feel something, and I know that it's time to get back to it. So
it's about readiness, isn't it? It's like, when is the body ready? And then when's the connection supposed to occur, and then harnessing it maybe.
I think that, I mean, there is a balance in it, and the key for me is that, unfortunately, you can say unfortunately, fortunately, I can say that I'm going to have a break and go and have a few days of fun, but the universe is not going to allow me just to completely bypass and forget it anymore, because that fun will be short-lived. Because again, if you're out there in reality, living your reality creation, interacting with people, then again, by design, if you're carrying about a density that is ready to be released, the universe is going to start creating situations where you're then experiencing that.
Yes.
So, once you understand this, that's why it's like, yeah, I'm having a bit of a break, but I can't avoid it indefinitely. Or then you're playing it out, and that
That's
can
it.
be even worse.
Oh, it can be, really, especially if there's alcohol involved.
Or anything,
Yeah.
So I guess that's how I deal with it, which is very similar in a lot of ways to you.
I think that really what we're doing is we're just learning again how to tap into a completely natural, wholesome process that we have been disconnected through programming from.
Yeah.
From that perspective, there is a lot of projection that happens with that, where and I've done this a lot, where it's like, this is all programming, this is and putting attention and then giving power to the adversity. But it's actually, if we could take that inside and realize that, okay, yeah, we have been, the programming has led to a sort of arrested development in terms of through repression of trauma. And a disconnection, create a disconnection from self, the illusion of separation. Then we don't have to focus on the dual aspect of that. All we have to focus on is what past trauma is in me that needs to be shifted. How do I, and then reconnecting to my natural processes of self and my natural connectivity to others and the whole. And then that's it, because that's what we're going for. Right.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think we'll all agree when we're in a place of joy and peace and happiness, we do feel more connected to everyone around us. And then, of course, when we are highly triggered or we're feeling that density again, we have a tendency to begin to move into that feeling of disconnect. And again, it's a feeling. The name of the game here is to reconnect, isn't it? Is to reconnect. To ourselves, to each other, to begin to live a life from a place of understanding, more compassion, and hopefully in that understanding and compassion we can begin to actually work together, perhaps in a way that we've not really truly been able to master before, for the greater good of everyone. So we move from a place of service to self, what's in it for me, to is what I'm contributing here, is this for the good of everyone? Because it's just one consciousness.
Which is actually even more rewarding
than
service to
self. Of course it is. You still get to gain individually, but so does everybody else. And
it's an amazing feeling to be in that flow. The moments when I'm in the most joy are when I'm working with people or when I'm having these kinds of conversations, like doing this now. Like that's when I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be at that particular time, and the emotion that comes with that, the belonging and the gratitude and the joy, the connectivity that comes with that is more than any amount of it's the more I'm putting in, the more it's reciprocated, and that is just an energy enhancing wonderful experience. It comes, you can't get that level of experience from simply the mentality of what can I get out of this.
Absolutely.
When the illusion is that that's how we get what we want, but it's coming from the perspective of separation.
Absolutely.
Which is an old belief system, an old paradigm. And actually breaking through that conditioning and seeing it differently is so much more rewarding. Absolutely. So, there's some encouragement.
Absolutely.
Right there. It's worth it.
I mean, I think I'll just tie this up now, like perfectly with, the 3D that we've been swimming in, our entire lives, and not just our lives, but for generations and generations, is a matrix, is a construct that's designed for us to have a dualistic experience, which creates separation. But really, what we're moving back to, that place of connection that we've spoke about, is love. And so really everything really, at its truest essence, is love, and everything that isn't love is an illusion. And so all we're really doing with all of this purging and all of these realizations, and in one lifetime too, which is quite mind-blowing, we are recognizing all the distortions and the illusions, and we're allowing them to fall away. And we're moving back into a place of love and connection.
Loving the physical realm.
Love in the physical realm, yes.
Heaven on earth.
Heaven on earth, so yeah. So, do you have anything else you want to add before I close down today?
No, I just want to say thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for joining me. And thank you, everyone, if you've made it to the end. I hope some of what we've discussed from our own personal experiences is helpful. Just remember to be kind to yourself. These are crazy times. We're all doing it together. There is only one consciousness. And we will get through this. We will get through this, and we will see better days. So giving everyone so much love, wherever you are in the world. Enjoy the rest of your morning, day, evening. Lots and lots of love.
Love you.
Okay, bye-bye for now.